Margaret Reynolds had been the director of Sunrise Senior Living for 14 years, and during that time she had built a reputation as a compassionate administrator who treated residents like family. Her marketing material showed smiling seniors, clean facilities and dedicated staff. Families toured the building and saw exactly what they wanted to see: a safe, caring environment where their elderly loved ones would be respected and protected. But what those families did not know was that behind the locked doors of Sunrise Senior Living, Margaret Reynolds had created a nightmare. She cut staff to skeleton crews, leaving helpless residents lying in soiled bedclothes for hours. She served expired food to save money. She denied medications to reduce costs. She ignored bedsores until they became infected. She turned off air conditioning during summer heat waves to lower utility bills while 90-year-old residents suffered in 100-degree rooms. And when residents or families complained, she transferred troublesome patients to isolated rooms where no one could hear them call for help, all while collecting over $3 million in fees from families who believed their loved ones were being cared for. What you are about to witness is the complete destruction of a woman who turned elderly care into a profit center built on suffering. So if you have watched this far, do not miss the end. Like the video and dive into the story, because this confrontation between calculated cruelty and unwavering justice will leave you speechless. It is Wednesday morning, 9 a.m. sharp, at the Providence Municipal Court. The courtroom is packed with devastated families, some holding photographs of elderly relatives who did not survive Sunrise Senior Living, others supporting frail survivors who insisted on attending to see justice served. And there at the defendant's table sits Margaret Reynolds in a conservative business suit, her expression showing a woman who still believes she can explain away the suffering. The bailiff's voice cuts through the grief. The state of Rhode Island versus Margaret Ann Reynolds. Judge Caprio looks down from his bench with barely restrained fury. Ms. Reynolds, you stand accused of elder abuse, neglect, fraud, and endangerment affecting 67 residents over a period of 5 years. 14 residents died due to your negligence. How do you respond? Reynolds stands with practiced composure. Your Honor, I believe these charges misrepresent the challenges of operating a senior care facility with limited resources. We did our best under difficult circumstances. Judge Caprio's eyes flash with anger. Limited resources, Ms. Reynolds. You collected over $3 million in fees from families. Your facility was not underfunded. You chose to pocket money instead of providing care. Reynolds maintains her professional tone. Your Honor, operating costs are substantial. Staffing, food, utilities, maintenance all require significant investment. We allocated resources as efficiently as possible. Ms. Reynolds, let me tell you what investigators found. During a surprise inspection, they discovered residents lying in feces-soaked bedding. Some had been unchanged for over 12 hours. Others had untreated bedsores so severe that bone was visible through infected wounds. One 92-year-old woman was found dehydrated and delirious in a room where the temperature was 107 degrees. This was efficient resource allocation. Subscribe to Judge Stories if you believe nursing home directors who abuse helpless elders deserve maximum punishment. For the first time, Reynolds' composure cracks slightly. We had staffing challenges. Healthcare workers are difficult to retain. Staffing challenges, Ms. Reynolds? You employed one nurse's aide for every 23 residents during night shifts. Federal guidelines require one aide for every 8 residents. You deliberately understaffed your facility to save money while residents suffered. Judge Caprio picks up a file. Let me tell you about one specific resident, Harold Martinez, age 87. Harold had Alzheimer's and required assistance with all daily activities. His daughter Jennifer paid you $4,800 per month for his care. What happened to Harold? Reynolds shifts uncomfortably. Mr. Martinez was a challenging patient with complex medical needs. Challenging? Ms. Reynolds, Harold Martinez was found by inspectors lying in a urine-soaked bed with a stage 4 bedsore on his lower back that had become so infected the wound was necrotic. Medical examiners determined that bedsore had been developing untreated for at least 3 months. Harold was in constant agony. When inspectors asked staff about his condition, they said they had been reporting it to you for weeks. What did you do? We had limited resources for specialized wound care. I planned to address it. When budget allowed. When budget allowed? Ms. Reynolds, Harold's daughter was paying you $57,600 per year. Where was that money going if not to treat a man dying from an infected wound? Judge Caprio's voice grows colder. Let me tell you what happened to Harold Martinez. 2 weeks after the inspection, he died of sepsis from that infected bedsore. His daughter held his hand while he died in agony from a completely preventable condition. You collected nearly $200,000 from Harold's family over 4 years, and you let him die slowly from neglect because treating his wound would have cost a few $100s. Reynolds's voice cracks. I never intended for Mr. Martinez to die. We did what we could. What you could, Ms. Reynolds. You did nothing, and Harold Martinez is not your only victim. Judge Caprio picks up another file. Let me tell you about Rose Chen, age 91. Rose was a retired teacher with dementia. Her son David paid you $5,000 per month, believing she would receive quality care. What happened to Rose? Ms. Chen was a resident who required significant supervision. Supervision. Ms. Reynolds, Rose Chen was found wandering outside the facility at 3 in the morning in her nightgown during a winter storm. The temperature was 19 degrees. A passing driver saw her and called 911. Rose was hypothermic and confused. When police investigated, they discovered that your facility's exterior doors had faulty locks that residents could easily open, but you had never repaired them because you did not want to spend the money. Rose Chen nearly froze to death because you would not fix a door lock. Reynolds looks down. I was not aware the locks were faulty. Not aware? Ms. Reynolds, staff had submitted 14 work orders about those locks over 6 months. You ignored every single one. And when Rose was returned to your facility after being treated for hypothermia, do you know what you did? I ensured she was monitored more closely. Monitored more closely? Ms. Reynolds, you transferred her to a room on the 3rd floor with no staff supervision and locked her door from the outside. You imprisoned a 91-year-old woman with dementia because she was inconvenient. Rose Chen's son had to threaten legal action to get her moved to a different facility. She died 4 months later, and her son believes the trauma of that night and her subsequent imprisonment accelerated her decline. Judge Caprio leans forward. Let me tell you what else investigators found. You served residents food that was weeks past expiration dates. You diluted medications to make them last longer. You turned off air conditioning during summer heat waves while temperatures inside reached dangerous levels. 3 residents died from heat-related complications during those heat waves. You knew elderly people are vulnerable to heat, yet you prioritized utility savings over their lives. Reynolds breaks down. I was trying to keep the facility financially viable. If we went bankrupt, all the residents would have nowhere to go. Financially viable? Ms. Reynolds, while you were serving expired food and denying air conditioning, you paid yourself an annual salary of $380,000. You purchased a vacation home, you drove a luxury car, you were not keeping the facility viable, you were extracting maximum profit while providing minimum care. Judge Caprio picks up a recording device. Ms. Reynolds, investigators recorded a staff meeting where you discussed cost-cutting measures. Let me play this recording. The courtroom hears Reynolds' voice, cold and businesslike. We are spending too much on supplies. Cut back on adult diapers by changing residents less frequently. Reduce meal portions. Stop ordering specialized medical supplies unless absolutely necessary. Our profit margins are too thin. These residents are paying top dollar. We need to maximize our return. The courtroom sits in horrified silence. A staff member's voice responds on the recording. But Ms. Reynolds, if we reduce changes, residents will develop bedsores and infections. Reynolds' recorded response is chilling. Then we will deal with those issues if they become serious enough to attract attention. Minor discomfort is acceptable if it improves our bottom line. Judge Caprio's voice cuts like ice. Ms. Reynolds, you just heard yourself explicitly state that elderly residents' discomfort was acceptable for profit. You instructed staff to provide substandard care to maximize financial returns. How do you explain this? Reynolds is sobbing now. I said things I should not have said. I was under pressure. Running a nursing home is stressful. Stressful? Ms. Reynolds, 14 people died because of your decisions. Harold Martinez died from an infected bed sore you refused to treat. Rose Chen nearly froze because you would not fix a lock. 3 residents died from heat exposure because you turned off air conditioning. How many deaths does it take before your stress stops being an excuse? Judge Caprio takes a deep breath. Margaret Reynolds, families trusted you with their most vulnerable loved ones. Adult children who could not provide full-time care chose your facility because they believed you would treat their parents with dignity. Elderly people who could not advocate for themselves depended on you for basic human needs. And you betrayed every single one of them for money. Reynolds' face crumbles completely. Your Honor, please, I can never work in healthcare again. I understand that. But please do not send me to prison. Let me volunteer at charities. Let me work to make amends. I am not a monster. Not a monster. Ms. Reynolds, you created conditions so horrific that inspectors compared your facility to a torture chamber. You let helpless, elderly people lie in their own waste, suffer from untreated wounds, go hungry, and die in agony. What would you call someone who does that? Judge Caprio's voice becomes firm. For elder abuse affecting 67 victims, I am imposing a sentence of 15 years in state prison. For 14 counts of negligent homicide, an additional 21 years. For fraud in collecting fees while providing substandard care, an additional 4 years. Your sentences will run consecutively for a total of 40 years in state prison. The courtroom erupts in gasps and some quiet applause. Reynolds collapses, screaming, 40 years, Your Honor! I am 58! I will be 98! I will die in prison! You will die in prison? Ms. Reynolds, Harold Martinez died at 87 because you refused to treat his bedsore. Rose Chen died at 91, still traumatized from being locked in a room. 14 people died because you valued money over their lives. Now, you will spend the rest of your life experiencing the helplessness they felt. Additionally, you are ordered to pay full restitution of $3 million to victims' families. Sunrise Senior Living is permanently closed and all assets are seized. You are banned from working in healthcare, elder care, or any position involving vulnerable populations. And you will serve every day of your 40 years, knowing that you tortured the people who trusted you most. The bailiffs move forward. As handcuffs click around Reynolds' wrists, Judge Caprio delivers final words. Margaret Reynolds, you were supposed to be a caregiver. Families paid you to protect their elderly loved ones. Instead, you created a nightmare where helpless people suffered daily while you collected their money. You let them lie in filth, denied them medical care, starved them and imprisoned them. 14 people died deaths that were completely preventable. Today you learn that exploiting the most vulnerable members of our society demands the harshest consequences. You will spend 40 years in prison and you will be 98 years old if you survive your sentence, experiencing the same helplessness and fear you inflicted on your victims. Within hours, news of the verdict spreads. Families of victims feel vindicated, but no verdict can bring back lost loved ones. Sunrise Senior. Living closes permanently, its name synonymous with elder abuse. New oversight regulations begin. Other nursing homes face increased inspections. Harold Martinez's daughter visits his grave and tells him justice was finally served. Rose Chen's son holds a photo of his mother and cries with relief. Sometimes, the most important lesson about caregiving comes from watching someone who was supposed to protect instead exploit and torture. Margaret Reynolds walked into that courtroom hoping to characterize neglect as resource management. She was dragged out in handcuffs, headed to 40 years in prison, where she will die experiencing the vulnerability she inflicted on 67 helpless elders. If you believe nursing home directors who abuse vulnerable elderly people deserve maximum punishment, please like and subscribe. Check out other stories where justice catches those who exploit the helpless. See you in the next video. Stay healthy.